Hashanah Tova. We changed the service around a little bit this year, putting the Kiddush at the beginning. Part of that was because typically the Kiddush came here and I would drink the glass of wine and then immediately have to turn and deliver a sermon. And that poses a little challenge. I came to the conclusion that either we start making Kiddush over a shot of whiskey or we move it, because it was somewhere in the middle, and either we go full throttle one way or the other. So this evening we've moved it. I want to begin this evening with words of thanks to all of you. The privilege and honor of standing before you as your rabbi is a privilege that I greatly appreciate. To work in partnership with Judy and the other members of the executive committee is not just an honor, but a joy. And together we are creating a vibrant synagogue that will animate this space for at least another 100 years or so. My father was born in May of 1935. His bar mitzvah took place on the weekend of May 14th and 15th of 1948. And just as he was getting ready to leave his house to head to the synagogue, the news came over the radio that the new state of Israel had been declared by David Ben-Gurion in Tel Aviv. That coincidence in time has remained a point of pride for my father and for his family ever since. Just 2 days ago, I spoke with Rabbi Meyer Kripke, who was my father's childhood rabbi and is now a spry 98-year-old who still writes a regular weekly Torah column for the Omaha Jewish paper. He recalled speaking that weekend of the excitement of Israel's independence, and still today he marvels at the rebirth of the Jewish state. I share his delight and awe, and yet I wish I could go back in time and coax Rabbi Kripke into opening the discussion even more, exploring not just the miracle of Israel's existence, but the great challenge of crafting a lasting peace. Israel's founders knew theirs was an enormous challenge, and tonight more than ever, we gathered here feel that struggle. For only the second time in Israel's existence, the new year arrives with palpable tension for the state of Israel and Jews all over the world. Only in 1973 did the trepidation trump that which is felt tonight. Then the issue was war. Now the issue is peace. Then the question was preparedness. And tonight, that same question of readiness looms large. On some level, the fact that we have moved from the fear of war to the fear of peace represents progress. But more than anything, it shows that too much of our world remains gripped by anxiety and distrust. On Yom Kippur Day in 1973, Egyptian and Syrian forces launched a surprise attack on Israel. Tensions had been running high, but no one imagined an imminent attack, much less one on Yom Kippur or during Ramadan, which was occurring at the same time that year. Stories unfolded of men being called out of synagogue services to report for reserve duty. The peace and calm of Yom Kippur shattered by bombs and bullets. The war lasted about 3 weeks, and though hostilities came to an end, a lasting peace never emerged. 6 years later, in 1979, Israel and Egypt reached a historic agreement, ending conflict and creating a new alliance meant to create a new Middle East. Among the terms of that accord, Israel agreed to an autonomous Palestinian state in the West Bank and Gaza. Tonight, nearly 32 years later, that element remains elusive. Both sides bear the burden of guilt. Palestinians have steadfastly refused to recognize fully Israel's right to exist. Israelis have stubbornly continued to build settlements on contested land. And so it is that on Rosh Hashanah 5772, that we gather here in this sanctuary while Israel, the United States, and the rest of the world are wrestling with the question of Palestinian statehood the role of the United Nations, and the need for a just and lasting peace. Israel's 62-plus years have been filled with triumph and tragedy. Our Israeli cousins have built a democratic society, helped to make the desert bloom, become leaders in technology for the whole world. Israel has rescued Jewish communities around the world, welcoming them to freedom and opportunity, even as destruction loomed. And Israel has accomplished these feats while facing wars, attacks, existential threats from every direction. Every family in Israel knows someone who has been injured or killed in war. Everyone feels the burden of defending the land. And in the complicated world of the Middle East, Israel has allowed itself to serve as an occupying force in the West Bank and Gaza for more than 40 years. Israel has voiced support for a land for peace deal, yet has continued to build settlements on contested ground, built fences and checkpoints, and engaged in behavior of questionable legality and unquestionable immorality. The drive for recognition of a Palestinian state at the United Nations presents many complications, but also at least some positive potential. In deciding to present their case at the United Nations, Palestinian leaders decided against starting another intifada, or even worse, an all-out war. For sure, most would prefer bilateral talks over unilateral declarations, but all reasonable people prefer any kind of talks to the spilling of blood. For myself, I have noticed a startling change in my own views over the last number of months. I first began to study the possibility of a Palestinian unilateral declaration of independence late last spring, and I had a strong hunch back then that I would be standing with you this evening, speaking on that very subject. But I did not anticipate that my own views would change, that I would spend the summer wrestling with these questions. Let me be clear. I am an ardent Zionist with a deep and abiding love for the land of Israel. I have visited many times. I lived in Jerusalem for a year. At one time, I even considered making Aliyah. And I am proud and excited to be traveling to Israel this December with the largest adult group Temple Concord has ever sent on a trip to Israel. I am also a pragmatist. The time for both the Palestinians and the Israelis to make the difficult choice to live with each other instead of in opposition to each other has arrived. The circumstances today are not great, but this is the reality of peacemaking. The timing is never right. The negotiating partners are never the preferred choice. The best result never fully attainable. My own connection to Israel dates back to a religious school teacher who was a committed Zionist herself. She taught a love of Israel that was infectious. My parents sent my sisters and brother and me to a Zionist camp, Herzl it was called, in Wisconsin for many years. And as a young teenager, I traveled to Israel for the first time as part of a Federation-sponsored trip for high school students. Two memories connected to that trip still stand out to me. Like most Jews, I had been taught of the sanctity and importance of the Western Wall. I had learned about the great temple that once stood in Jerusalem, the remnants which remain, the deep spirituality of the place. Snaking through the old city was an extraordinary experience. But when I reached the Kotel, the Western Wall, my teenage self looked up and said simply, "Well, it's a wall." I kept a daily journal during that trip, and when I returned to Omaha, I sat down one afternoon with my paternal grandfather, who himself had lived in Israel for a year and had also visited many times. Together, we went through the trip day by day. My grandfather was dying of cancer at the time, but I can still see the joy in his eyes as his youngest grandchild described the trip. When we got to the day on the trip when I visited the Western Wall, he asked me what I thought. I told him the truth, that it just did not resonate with me. He looked me in the eye, and he told me how lucky I was to stand there as a free Jew at the Western Wall. He reminded me how my own great-grandparents, his parents, and the generations before them longed to do what I was able to do. He was not angry or heavy-handed, but he was very direct. And in those few sentences, he showed me the holiness that had eluded me just a few weeks before. In time, the old city of Jerusalem became my favorite spot in Israel, a place of power and sanctity, a place of community and hope. In Jerusalem, Jews, Christians, and Muslims coexist in relative peace. Even more, all three interact with each other, befriend each other, do business with each other. From time to time, flare-ups do occur, but for the most part, the old city of Jerusalem models the value of interconnectedness. It is this value, the realization that we all need each other, that we are all connected to each other, which has changed me over the past few months. Yes, I believe that Jews have a strong and ancient bond with the land. So do Christians, and so do Muslims. The recognition of all that is shared must be a part of the road forward. At the start of this summer, I still believed that the fear which was much more pronounced on the Palestinian side than on the Israeli side. I believed that they were afraid to make a peace deal, afraid to be accused of being sellouts, afraid to create the catalyst that could end animosity among Jews and Arabs worldwide. And while I think all of those fears remain, I have become convinced that Israel too fears a peace deal. It is so much easier for both sides to remain entrenched, to have a clear enemy, to use distrust as a campaign tool to get reelected. It is so much easier to say that the other has no respect for beliefs, that the other will never be a partner, that the other will always want more. For more than a generation, Israel has had chances to make peace deals, and for more than a generation, nothing has emerged. Yes, frameworks and negotiations have ensued, and real progress can be seen. I do not believe that Israeli citizens wish to remain in an adversarial role with their Palestinian neighbors, nor do I believe that Palestinian citizens wish to remain in adversarial relationships with their Israeli neighbors. But I have come to believe that too many Israeli and Palestinian leaders have found too tempting the benefits which come from having such a clearly defined foe. Making peace requires kishkis of steel. One must possess inner fortitude, the likes of which are rarely, if ever, seen. Israel has had some leaders so endowed, from all points on the political spectrum. But today's leaders lack such blessing, and Israel is the worse for those shortcomings. As much as we want the whole cake, we know we cannot have it. Just as Palestinian leaders must stand up to their Arab compatriots and find a way to accept Israel, to accept the interconnectedness of the land and our claims to it, so too must Israel now stand up and recognize that we can accomplish more as partners than as adversaries. And it is in this task, the job of clearly and cogently promoting an understanding of mutuality, that we American Jews have a major role to play. The simplest path starts at your own home computer. The next time you go online, go to apac.com, go to jstreet.com, go to arza.com. Each of these organizations has important and valuable information. They each maintain slightly different points of view. Yes, I really mean only slightly different. Their goal is a shared one, a peaceful and prosperous Israel. Even better than reading their information, get involved. APAC and J Street are both in the process of building local organizations here in Syracuse. Nationally, the two are often crafted into polar opposites. One, the Republican-leading organization, the other the Democratic-leaning organization. This kind of politicization only hurts Israel. Do what I've done. Join both. Learn from both. Question both. Support both. Israel and her neighbors need unity now more than ever. If we allow ourselves to become fragmented, we are only hurting the situation on the ground in the Middle East. And go look at ARZA a second time. ARZA is the Association of Reformed Zionists of America. ARZA was created as a voice for American Reformed Jews, for you and me. ARZA does not get into partisan politics, but does strive to connect regular Reformed Jews with the land of Israel. In most Reformed congregations around the country, an ARZA group exists, promoting study and interaction with Israel. ARZA is helping us connect with a Reformed community during our trip this December. And how wonderful would it be for our community to have an ARZA group here, helping all of us to better understand and appreciate all that Israel is and all that Israel could yet be. Even more than learning about Israel, the time is now to visit Israel. Whether you have been a dozen times or never before, a visit to Israel can bring unparalleled understanding and incalculable spiritual benefit. A trip to Israel is a trip through history and a trip to the future. Our temples trip this winter will include visits to Christian, Muslim, and Jewish holy sites. We will meet with a member of Knesset, Israel's parliament, to better understand the current political climate. And we will meet with Palestinian leaders to learn their perspectives as well and to enter into dialogue. We will explore ancient ruins and the headquarters of Israel's exciting electric car industry. We will connect with regular Israelis and make connections with Reform congregations. One of the chief goals of our trip is to create dialogue among the participants on the trip between our Syracuse community and Israel. Our trip is designed specifically to encourage learning and exploration, to foster discussion and debate. Often, too often, we are told to avoid politics and religion in proper conversation. The modern Middle East demands that we do just the opposite. It is only through debate, discussion, dialogue that we will find deeper understanding of our own views and the views of others. And this final challenge, to engage in the discourse, stands as the third major goal for those seeking a different kind of future for the Middle East. Rabbi Brad Hirschfeld, an Orthodox rabbi who leads Klal, an interdenominational Jewish organization, eloquently teaches the value of engagement in one of his books. Rabbi Hirschfeld is a regular visitor to Syracuse, and he'll be speaking at Syracuse University later this fall. His book, entitled "You Don't Have to Be Wrong for Me to Be Right," explores the benefits of interaction. He suggests that in open dialogue, one can see that multiple truths can be found, that understanding and friendship need not include winners and losers, that joint exploration offers the single best path toward understanding. And so, on this Rosh Hashanah of fear and unknowing, a time of trepidation for Israel and the entire Middle East, and dare I say the entire world, Rabbi Hirschfeld's call must ring loud and clear for us. We must enter the fray, open the discussions, listen to those with whom we disagree, probe, explore, learn, and hopefully grow in knowledge and in understanding. Today marks the beginning of a new year for us. We can wrestle with the issues we face, confront our fears, or we can just get through. We can choose to do things differently, or we can accept the status quo as it is. World affairs point in a clear path. This year must be different. This must be the year when we truly turn, and in our own turning, bring about a new world, a world filled with care, with concern, and with a new appreciation for coexistence. L'Shana Tova.